a presentation of South Carolina ETV.
This program is made possible in part by a grant from the South Carolina Humanities Council.
CCI is a monster or a monastery?
You can work at this institution for years and never be in a use of force situation. And then all of a sudden one day you can earn 6 or 7 months worth of pay. I mean, you can get hurt down there.
CCI to me is a unique city in which we've got just about everything that you would find in a city on the street.
Chuck. Chuck. Wake up time. Wake up.
Prison does change an inmate. It will change an officer. It will change a person. Some of the inmates that come in, they're hard. They get harder. They probably polish their skills in here. Some find something different.
CCI is cruel, not using with punishment.
90% of the population are black
and gay.
Nasty.
Got one of the nastiest joints in South Carolina.
Central Correctional Institution, Columbia, South Carolina. Driving downtown, it's impossible not to notice the state's oldest and most foreboding prison. Like other prisons around the nation, CCI is a public symbol of humankind's worst element. It's supposed to be what a civilized society does with the uncivilized. While criminal activity is ever expanding, so are the nation's prisons. The walls and fences that keep prisoners in also keep the public out. Each faceless figure inside costs taxpayers $13,000 for each year of a sentence. The numbers are climbing. For $100 million, the state is building 5 new prisons. They too will overflow if the current trend continues. In South Carolina, more citizens are imprisoned per capita than in any state in America, which has more of its citizens imprisoned than any country on earth.
Well, we got it going on over there, boy.
Viewing CCI's prisoners from a safe distance provides a temporary illusion. Imprisonment is rarely forever. 99% of this population will someday return to society. How much correction takes place in an individual serving a year or 2, or 10, at an institution like CCI? If human behavior were predictable, the work of corrections would be precise. It isn't.
And that tends to make a person think violent, you know what I'm saying? You can't help it. You feel pinned up, you're helpless in here, you know? You can't do anything for yourself. You get dependent on someone to tell you when to eat, when to wash, when to get up, when to go to bed, you know, how to dress, what to say. And those type of things tend to make you violent. You know, you feel rebellious, like you're helpless. I mean, it takes you way back.
It caused me to grow and mature as an individual, and I didn't allow the negative stuff to get to me, and the tools that were provided to me to make the necessary changes I need to make, I took them up and I used them. I did not just let them lay there and look at them and hope that they get up and do the job for me.
Incarceration at CCI produces a different outcome for each inmate. It is difficult to judge or even begin to make sense of a penal system without the advantage of history. Unlike today's modern prisons, CCI reflects 2 centuries of changing penal codes and changing values. The idea of large-scale imprisonment is rooted in a penal reform movement begun in Europe and built upon by Americans.
Well, one of the things about mankind is that men really
Historian
are
Herbert Johnson.
very much aggressive and assertive. They tend toward violence. They have short tempers. When you see something you want, you go and get it, regardless of who it belongs to. Sexual activity can trigger all sorts of violence, rape and various other sexual crimes. The whole spectrum of man's animal nature comes out as a source of criminal activity.
Imprisonment as a means of punishment is a relatively new idea. For hundreds of years, punishment under the law involved monetary restitution and violent payback. From a modern perspective, it is often difficult to distinguish the civilized from the uncivilized in the historical pursuit of justice.
What happens, of course, is that society does establish that criminal justice system, that penal system, and then it begins to be used for other purposes. It begins to be used as a tool for oppressing various classes. The ruling class oppress the working class and in effect produce a system where it's very repressive socially.
Life in the antebellum South had at least one thing in common with life elsewhere. People cheated, stole, and became highly aggressive, quite literally at the drop of a hat. The man of high social standing often took to dueling and other violent means to settle differences, while he often stood to gain respect for defending his honor. People of lower class clearly stood at a legal disadvantage, and if you were a slave, you had virtually no legal protection. Some plantation masters were perceived as merciful. Many others punished ritually. Plantation justice was arbitrary.
There was a guardhouse on the farm where the worst niggas was kept. And while they was in that guardhouse, they weren't fed but once a day.
As part of the Federal Writers Project in 1939, the words of Callie Elder recall the morbid memories of one ex-slave.
If one slave killed another, Master Billy made the overseer tie that dead nigga to the one what killed him. And the killer had to drag the corpse round till he died too.
Punishment under the law was carried out by local sheriffs. South Carolina's 25 district jails suffered from gross neglect. Each year, grand juries inspected the district jails and made presentments to the state.
Said jail stands in a very unhealthy situation, which subjects the unfortunate to risk his life with the fever in a confined and sickly
present
jail.
as a grievance the state of the jail, which from its small size, the prisoners therein are not allowed the privileges and comforts of a civilized country. Frequently, the unfortunate female is confined with the male prisoner in the same room, the maniac with the debtor.
Suspects and witnesses were often locked up alongside convicted felons. That's because time in jail was less a punishment than it was a holding tank for those awaiting trial. Convicts were fined, branded, whipped, and pilloried. As late as 1813, capital punishment was the sentence for 165 different crimes, including picking pockets and witchcraft. only the smallest percentage of convicted felons were actually sent to the gallows, there lacked a range of punishments to fit the crime. It was not unusual for a person guilty of a minor offense to receive harsh punishments, while merciful juries let a murderer walk free. A long and complex political struggle led to reform of South Carolina's penal codes and the construction of the penitentiary. Beginning in 1797 and steadily for the next 70 years, the legislature heard appeals from governors, representatives, intellectuals, and concerned citizens. Governor Drayton in 1802, in a speech to the Senate, said,
"This is an object worth the consideration, whether a penitentiary house would not be established in this state to which, instead of taking away life, convicts might be condemned to labor for a term of years. Public manufactories might hence be established for rope making, for ironworks, and for other useful purposes, while the demand which such establishment would excite would encourage the industry of all the farmers around."
A year later, the new governor, Richardson, echoed these sentiments.
"I will not presume to say that for no crime whatever would it be found expedient to inflict the punishment of death. Probably in some few cases it might, but those ought to be of the most atrocious nature. This establishment, however, will be well worth an experiment."
In other parts of the nation and in Europe, a penal reform movement had already begun. Thinkers of the Enlightenment felt that science and compassion could serve to cure many societal ills, crime being among the worst. A penitentiary was a place to pay penance to God, to make up for wrongdoing. Many individuals supported change not because of any faith in the penitentiary. They were simply repulsed by the gallows. But opposition was strong. Southern conservatives warned of problems, pointing fingers at the northern example. Growing urban problems had accelerated the northern move toward prisons. When construction of penitentiaries first began in the north around the 1790s, not enough was known about administering them, and by the 1820s, most of the nation's penitentiaries were losing money and experiencing problems. South Carolina conservatives ridiculed the concept, describing the penitentiary as a college for graduating villains. A Barnwell jury said, "To be well fed and stored is not a punishment, but an inducement to misdemeanor." When the Civil War ended slavery, it forced South Carolina's system of plantation justice to be replaced. Trial of African Americans accused of theft and assault would no longer be conducted by the plantation overseer, but in the same courts with whites, with the result that local sheriffs would be unable to house the increased number of prisoners.
Well, it's interesting that South Carolina really is the last to establish a state prison in the South, and it's really the last to take on any kind of steps to reform its penal code.
Historian Herbert Johnson.
One, the state is very conservative. It's always been that way and was even more so in the 19th century. And secondly, the aristocratic people who ran the state politically and socially in the 19th century felt that it was their duty and their responsibility and in their interest to run the criminal justice system their way and to mete out punishments personally, but why they felt they should be punished. And so it wasn't until 1867 that you finally have a prison established in South Carolina. And then even when it's established, essentially that prison has continued to operate under the same sort of political control and political auspices that existed prior to its establishment.
There was much debate on the location of the penitentiary. Every district competed for control. The key to eventual location was water. It was felt the penitentiary should be nearly, if not completely, self-supporting. The Broad and Congaree rivers and the recently built Columbia Canal promised abundant water power to drive machinery for prison industries. These prison industries were the great hope of the reformist and of the pragmatist. Putting inmates to work provided an answer to the very real question of how the operation of such a large institution could be sustained. At the same time, new theories in penology stressed rehabilitation of the inmates through a regimen of education, discipline, and training in crafts and skilled trades. Individuals entering the institution limited to criminal skills could re-enter society possessed of legitimate skilled trades and infused with the work ethic. The work began 1 mile from the proposed site of the penitentiary, close to an abundant supply of seamless granite. Unlike the decaying district jails, a tough and weather-resistant granite structure would greatly reduce escapes. The stone was loaded on railway cars at the quarry 1 mile up the Broad River. These were ferried down the Columbia Canal, stopping opposite the construction site of the penitentiary. South Carolina's first state prison was built mainly by ex-slaves. The men labored under the watchful eye of guards and were paid 75 cents a day. In a plea to Governor Orr to commute one man's sentence from death to life and labor, the lawyer wrote,
"The state would benefit by such action because Quick is a big, hearty, strong fellow, just suited to carry stone and mortar, and has enough Negro blood in his veins to make him hardy and durable and a first-rate hand to assist in building the state prison."
A long chain was attached to each man's wrist, 20 at a time. A 12-pound ball extended from a short chain to the ankle. There were always at least 100 workers on site. Plans called for a structure 500 feet long, 55 feet wide, and 45 feet high, with space for 548 cells. While construction dragged on, a 12-foot wooden fence was erected, and South Carolina was finally on its way to a state-of-the-art prison facility. On April 18, 1867, 2 white men, convicted of stealing bacon from a freedman, became the first inmates at the South Carolina Penitentiary. Soon, African Americans were sent as well, and before long, 3 men crammed into each 6 by 4 foot cell. Like life outside the institution, life in the penitentiary was segregated. At a National Prison Association convention, the chairman of the Penitentiary Board of Directors reported,
"After the emancipation of the colored people, whose idea of freedom from bondage was freedom from work and a license to pillage, means had to be established for their control."
The men worked together and ate together, but were required to maintain silence during labor, except to ask necessary questions. The system of discipline used in a prison had more to do with successful operation rather than any enlightened penal theory. Successful operation also meant making money. Inmates were involved in making furniture and clothing and in binding books. Under pressure from the state to cut expenditures, the prison followed the lead of other southern states in providing cheap prison labor to private industry. The Greenwood and Augusta Railroad paid $3 a month for each prisoner. The men were kept in cages where they slept chained to bunks, padded by straw crawling with vermin and lice, when the bunks had straw. Of the railroad's 287 leased convicts, almost half died within the 2 years of service. The years of convict leasing in the early 1880s were to be the only years that the penitentiary covered its expenses and turned a profit. The system came under sharp attack from reform groups and private industry. Reformers exposed the abuse. Competitors of those benefiting from the system expressed outrage at good old boy politics. Cheap prison labor afforded to a select few was viewed as unfair competition. This charge was eventually to tie the hands of prison industries in general. One of the results of the labor movement of the 1920s was the Hawes-Cooper Act, forbidding interstate transportation of prison-made goods. Even a more serious handicap for the South Carolina penitentiary was the poor market for goods in the state's weak economy. The business of running the penitentiary was the dominant force shaping prison life, but the question of punishment remained. And for some, a symbolic few, the question was not how they should live, but rather how to die.
And of course, hangings were one of the great amusements in 19th century America. People would come to watch the hanging and bring their picnic lunch and wait to see the drama of an individual die. And the point simply is people who were sensitive to the overall emotional impact of a hanging came to the conclusion that somehow that brutalized those people who watched the hanging, the execution, and that it should be taken out of the public eye. That in effect criminals sometimes were even glorified or made heroes by the actual formality and the celebratory nature of a hanging. And so increasingly in the 1840s and 50s, executions become private rather than public.
Executions were changing in other ways to keep in step with the times. In an era of great gadgetry, a new electrical invention was making its way into penitentiaries around the nation. South Carolina acquired an electric chair in 1912. It adopted the bizarre yet familiar nickname, Old Sparky, and has been used to carry out the death penalty 240 times, generally for rape and murder.
I've seen witness to fall out. Couldn't stand it. Particularly, I've seen several women just faint. Can't stand it. And some people can see the whole thing and tell you, kill him again. yeah, people do that.
Paul Jeter, during his 27-year sentence, he assisted in 7 executions. After the physician pronounced death, Jeter's job was to carry the corpse from the electric chair to the cooling table.
You can see that blue blaze in that cap. I didn't know, just watch it, you know. But,
why?
Well, I just want to see it. I couldn't see that, you know, I didn't want to see that, you know. No, really, nah, I didn't want to see it.
Jeter's 27 years in the penitentiary were served for housebreaking, his first offense. He remembers the days when discipline was tougher.
That policy, by taking off the cap, hit men all black. You'd have to take it off. You couldn't tip it. You couldn't just tip it like that. You had to take it off, you know. See.
And what would happen if you didn't?
He'd knock it off. They wouldn't knock it off.
The day of his release in 1972, Jeter returned to CCI to work there, supervising the wood shop. He has worked for the Department of Corrections ever since. The most dramatic period of change for the South Carolina Penitentiary was spurred by this man, Ellis McDougall.
How are you?
Fine.
You count right?
Counts right.
Counts right.
Well, I came here as a deputy warden in 1958. And, of course, conditions in this institution in those days were just awful. This institution had 1,800 inmates. We had 625 in cell block 1. We had a steel center section in cell block 1. And we would keep the new inmates on one tier there. And if we got a rash of inmates, we'd have 4 and 5 in a cell. I mean, hey, they'd almost have to take turns sleeping. But we had 23 officers for all of that. We had open gambling on the yard was the only recreation. There was no school. There was a part-time doctor. It was totally segregated. There was absolutely nothing to do except work and play cards.
The thing that worries us about it is that we know from research that the younger they start in crime, the longer they stay in it. And
this archival film was produced by WIS Television in Columbia when it named McDougal the 1967 Man of the Year.
What about the changes that have taken place since you've come down here at the institution?
Well, I've been, I guess. Remember the first night at midnight, I came to change the shift. And I made 12 midnight on July 1st, I became the director. And my first call was to the Wateree Farm to take the chains and stripes off all inmates. I just didn't think that was acceptable in the days of 1962. And slowly but surely started to make changes. Got the cash money away from the inmates because I knew if I could get the cash money, that ended the gambling. And if they didn't have cash money, it would reduce a tremendous amount the amount of drugs coming in, the fraud going on between inmates and officers. We got a federal grant to build a vocational center here and started teaching vocations. We brought in a full-time recreation director. We really got some sports going for all ages. We hired a education director and really seriously took the building behind us and started working on responsible education programs for adults.
I think it'd be 47. Huh? 47. 47?
The CCI McDougal returns to today recalls a few familiar faces. Frankie San, the Japanese Santa Claus, who began teaching CCI inmates 27 years ago, is still working as CCI's librarian. He has since managed to convert this corner of the prison, the library, into an oasis. To McDougal, these 27 years say less about a changing CCI than about the unchanging world outside.
And the thing that dramatically affects me, as it did today, is that none of the people here, or all the people here, with a few exceptions, maybe a dozen, were not even born when I was the commissioner. The real question that our society really has to answer itself is that what is it that we do wrong that every year we produce a new group of violent criminals? And what can we do to stop that?
During his walkthrough of CCI, McDougal encounters yet another familiar face.
You guys still here?
This time, it's not a CCI employee.
You mean you came back? Yeah. I didn't rebuild it. We tried.
The symbolic name change from penitentiary to Central Correctional Institution, enacted by McDougal, accompanied far-reaching reform in the final quarter century of CCI's history. The problems which remain are the result of a complex combination of things. To this day, the courts remain highly class-conscious. CCI can't help but live up to its reputation as the bottom of the barrel of South Carolina's criminal justice system. While the prison reform legislation of the 70s poured millions into developing rehabilitation at CCI, these same laws protect inmates from being forced to work, to receive education, to take advantage of any programs whatever. And while the public rallies behind politicians who promise to get tough on crime, the resulting policies at CCI often spell problems which eventually return to the street.
If a man ain't got nothing to do, he lay around in his cell all day. Loafing. There's nowhere to go around here. Look. If he ain't got a job, then he's bored. So therefore, that's gonna get him in trouble. You think about taking a little pill, drink a little wine or something. A man mop the floor for 5 minutes in the morning. Stuff like that there. Wash the shower down, taking 15 minutes. He got the rest of the day for himself. We want to work. We like to be out on the side of the road doing something to occupy time. But I said, ain't no way I can work as hard as I did when I come in. They put me out there doing the job I did roofing work. Ain't no way I can make 8 hours right now. But I done got back and got fat, lazy. So all right, man, I'm gonna go back out there, I'm looking for something easy to do.
Their basic needs provided for, some inmates choose not to work. The inmates at CCI who want to work charge that the institution doesn't provide enough jobs. Without the opportunity to earn work credits, the incentive to work toward early release is lost. And CCI moves one critical step further from its original concept as a public manufactory, a place to socialize criminals through work.
Hey, y'all got any witchcraft, man? You what? You got any witchcraft?
Perhaps the most vexing problem facing CCI, facing any prison, is dealing with the psychological and sociological variables of its inmate population. Stepping inside, an outsider becomes instantly aware of how difficult it must be to correct human behavior, individually and on a large scale. The complexities of prisoners, of prison life, are perhaps best understood by coming face to face with some of the inmates themselves and with the people charged with their custody.
This place.
Meet Joe McCown.
When I walked in here 17 years ago, everybody probably heard the noise of my asshole tightening up. They just didn't know what the sound was. And for the next 6 weeks, 6 months, I walked around with my back literally to the wall. When I'd walk down the tunnel, I'd be walking sideways.
Well, one of the first things I experienced was down in the mess hall. And I seen a stabbing. An inmate actually got stabbed to death over a piece of chicken, which seems very irrelevant and minute to somebody out on the street. But in here, the rules is totally different.
I really think that for the most part, you have to go look for trouble. It's not the trouble comes to look for you. If there's a riot, sure, everybody's in trouble. But if you don't do drugs, if you're not out there robbing, stealing, gambling, doing all those things, you're not gonna necessarily have problems back here. I thought convicts were these big bad monsters that made King Kong look like a wimp. And then I realized that most, you wouldn't know that a man's a convict if you saw him on the streets, unless he had a sign stenciled across his back. And the basic difference is that the people in here, for whatever reason, have overcome a barrier, between what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Regard whether that's pickpocket or murder. You've got to cross the barrier that you obey the law, you break the law. The racial ratio at CCI and corrections in this part of the country, a good deal of it has to do with economics. Blacks are disproportionately poorer than whites. Poor people are more likely to commit crime. They're less likely to have a lawyer that's going to get them out. They're less likely to have a judge or a jury that's going to be sympathetic to them. And really, you could extend that even further to educational. They're less likely to have a good education. That would even go to the jobs that they would be able to get, to hold. An armed robber or a thief or that, they have economic reasons. They may not be valid, but there are economic reasons involved.
Paul Ulmer's job at CCI is running the schoolhouse.
I feel like that we not only teach materials or knowledge from books, but we also teach survival skills to individuals, how to interact, interpersonal relationships. In some cases, the individuals have not been able to cope with the stress. Control, self-control is necessary for them to survive on the street.
Once they get that straightened, Kenneth, you and I probably need to talk more about.
And whenever you realize that these people that are at CCI are from 22 to 65 or 70, that some of them have been incarcerated from the time that they were 6, 7, or 8 years old, it's difficult for these individuals to know just how to deal with freedom. They've been accustomed to a structured type of life to where they are told when to get up, when to go to bed, when to go to work, when to go to school, when to participate in some group, when to go to eat. And we take these freedoms for granted. The fellows that are incarcerated at CCI can deal with truthfulness.
And that's what I met you, fat buddy.
See that?
He's a good
Basically, Mr. Ulmer, he's the type of guy that if you come to him with a problem, he would not hesitate under any circumstance to help you. We respect him because he respects us, and that's a big thing within a prison setting.
Prison life changes not only inmates, but also the people who work there. This is Ulmer's 15th year at CCI.
It's taught me that we all make mistakes. It's only by the good grace of God that I'm not incarcerated at CCI. I made mistakes. I made some mistakes that have been probably, well, I wouldn't say that they're mistakes that is as serious as some of the mistakes the individuals have made that are incarcerated here. But I've seen some very petty things also that I felt like could have been corrected some other way other than through incarceration.
This is that other thing that I had to do. Okay. Another thing.
Donald Hullabaugh, shown here working with Ulmer, performed most responsibly as head clerk. Less than a week after this videotaping, everything changed.
About 7 pages.
There's only 20 to go.
South Carolina prison officials still looking for 2 men who broke out of Columbia's Central Correctional Institution last night. Officials are looking for the escapees, 59-year-old Donald Halleck, who was serving his sentence for assault and battery with intent to kill, and 36-year-old Donald Lee Hullabaugh, who was serving a life term for kidnapping.
Hit by the news of Hullabaugh's escape, Ulmer responds that he would think twice about hiring him again if Hullabaugh returned to CCI.
Is that to do with you're not wanting to help him because he doesn't deserve help, or because you feel like he can't be trusted? There's a difference there, isn't there?
I think that my role as a school administrator in prisons is to help everyone that really wants and needs help. I don't think it's my place to evaluate whether they deserve help or not.
While it is clear that inmates often need help, that is not to say that help is always wanted. While some motivate themselves to work within the system, others rage against it.
CCI to me, I feel like it's a plantation.
CCI is a hate factory.
To me, it's one big concentration camp.
CCI stands for Central Correctional Institution.
CCI is a place to house black folks, keep us back here.
They need to tear this ragged big area down. They need to do something. We doing time, but they need to treating us like dogs. We human beings like everybody else.
Perhaps no other part of CCI houses more rage than Cell Block 2. This is a prison within prison.
Because CB2 is to me, is one of the hardest places there is to work.
Sergeant Brooks.
Because you have a whole different kind of population in here. We get all kinds of people in here. We get standard security risk inmates. We get inmates that come here that don't want to cooperate with you at all. All they want to do is just sit back and think about things that they can raise hell with. Flooding cells, tear the sink off the wall, setting fires in the cell, banging on the cell door every minute of the day. real little things, like if we don't have enough Kool-Aid to go around, they start raising hell about the Kool-Aid. We don't have enough Kool-Aid, then we have to, it's real simple to get Kool-Aid. Oh, you know, go back down to mess hall and get it and come back. But if we tell them that we're gonna get some more, then they raise hell about that until we get the Kool-Aid back in the unit.
That guy right there, that's what y'all need to talk to. They took a tray a month ago and hit him in the eye. They took a food tray and hit him upside the head and knocked him down the stairs. That old man right there had stitches all on his eye.
They beat us every day.
See, don't nobody hear about that right there. They don't tell us about that.
I had 40-something stitches in my hand right here.
You got officers getting mad and inmates in here and they throw their mail in the trash can that come from the street. You know what I'm saying?
What you call a bullpen right here. You act up.
This is where they come and beat us at. Where they come and
no, they don't want to do that. Don't even put that out.
That's what, the public sees us wanting to be beaten on inmates. We don't have to do that. I can get any inmate to do anything I want him to do because I know how to approach him and I know how to talk to him. And that's the way we try to train these officers in here. We can put you in a security cell, and if you was on C tier in front of the TV, we would just put you back on B tier. That's where all the security cells are. And when you go in there, you might not be able to see the TV that good. That's one punishment. Then you say to yourself, man, I sure miss my cell. I'm gonna straighten up so I can go back to my regular cell. So I won't have to stay in there. Now don't flood this cell out there, man. Don't tear my cell up now.
Man, I'm not gonna do that, man. I don't got myself straight. I don't want to go back over. That's not when y'all move me, because it ain't no point over here. There ain't no point over here.
You gotta stay someplace in the building. See, right now the public sees that back in the old days, they saw real big officers walk around with shotguns and sitting down on the side of the road looking at it, and they were calling us guards. But see, now we're correction officers because an officer has to go through the academy. He has to learn how to do reports, how to fire a weapon. He has to run a certain time for 1.5 miles. We do everything the police officers do. The only thing that we don't do is ride around in cars with pistols and arrest people.
Sergeant Brooks, he's fairly new within CV2. I haven't had any problems with him. Like I said, he's one of the few that I perceive as being an 8-hour worker. He comes in and goes out. I have nothing against him.
Corey Funches, along with some 50 other inmates in cell block 2, is here for more than 8 hours a day. He's locked up for 23 hours and is allowed only 1 hour out for showers and recreation. The relationship between correctional officer and inmate is placed under terrific stress. While Funches respects Sergeant Brooks, this is the exception.
Like I told you, pigs, I don't like pigs. I don't associate with them. You can't be my friend and my oppressor too, you know what I'm saying? They are the custodians here. How can I be friends with a man that turned the key on the door on me every day? If I was working here, I'd be fired and incarcerated in one day because I let everybody go.
So I hope I get a letter from old Mike today, man. Yeah.
I'm here at CCI for the same reason that I'm here in CV2, for disciplinary reasons. I was charged for assault and battery on a deputy warden at Broad River Correctional Institution, and for that disciplinary action, they sent me to what they call a maximum security prison and placed me on M custody, and here I am at CV2 and CCI. See, I've never been fortunate enough to go out in population here. I've been locked up for a year now. Hey, man. About 3 rats jumped up on my burial last night, right? Yeah. One of the rats jumped up on my bed. Yeah. I kicked him. He fell on the wall opposite of the bed. Considered dangerous, maximum security, a threat. Yeah. Would you consider George Bush a violent man because he orders 200,000 civilians in Iraq to be killed? Violence is violence. I mean, so what? You got people in here who kill maybe 1 or 2 people. I didn't kill anybody. I assaulted someone, but that doesn't make me any violent than the mass murders that our government is. White criminals, they commit crimes that people like us on the juvenile bar commit. I'll say this to the high-class white criminals, and I'm talking to the governors, the senators, all these type of people like that, and the lawmakers. First of all, to understand a people, you have to understand where they come from. We were brought over here some 400 years ago. We were stripped of our culture, We were stripped of our language. We were stripped of our religion. We had to come over here. Our first generation was denied education. They were treated like animals, and therefore you can't expect us to be as good at this thing as white people are. I mean, white people, y'all, this is y'all culture, y'all language, this is y'all education, y'all understand us. These laws are for y'all.
That inmates like Funchess feel contempt for the establishment may help explain the lawlessness of some, but this man's rebellion exploded close to home.
I could talk to you about it to an extent. Okay, what it was involved in, it was a deputy warden. She was an African American, and it was a woman. But at our institution, she wasn't considered the type of African American that was for the black people. Like I said before, every brother is not a brother just because of his color. He might as well be undercover. And a lot of black people get caught up in that thing as if, well, I work with the white man, I'm better than them because I got power. Same thing back when Chicken George and Kunta Kinte, you got some slaves that snitch and beat and some slaves that work. So I feel like she was the type of slave that was working for the white man, and she wasn't for me at all. So what I was involved in was an incident where a cup of urine and feces was thrown into her face. Now, I have never admitted to doing such a thing, and I won't admit to it now, but that's what I was charged for.
He's retaliating because he's locked up, okay? He went through the system. He broke the crime, he went to court, he came to jail. When you put this badge on, they're looking at the badge. He's looking at the badge. He's not looking at the person behind the badge. He sees a lot of black officers working back here, and all of a sudden, just because he's black, we're supposed to take his side. It doesn't work like that. We have a job to do.
Well, okay, yeah, of course, I took part in it, but I didn't do the actual throwing. I mean,
Do you agree with any part of it?
do I agree with it? Well, I'll put it to you this way. You can't keep slinging crap in people's face all your life and not expect for crap to be slung back in yours. It's kind of like fighting back.
Much of crime is committed by young men. It is commonly believed that when the rage of hormones settle, most people self-correct. When an inmate demonstrates the wisdom of years down inside CCI, his status is elevated. He earns the respected title of convict. The wisdom of 12 years to his name, Arthur Quesada, is still unsure what all this will mean for him in 1996, the year of his earliest possible parole.
You know, the prison system is funny. It could help you and it could kill you. When I'm saying the way it could kill you, if you buck up against it and try to fight against it, you'll never see light again. But if you use the system for your benefit by what? Education, by college, by a training program, by doing what you're supposed to do, and just keep on doing until they finally say, well, this man, he rehabilitated himself, because that's the only way a person really changes, by himself. Brother, how much time does someone's got to do to learn their lesson? How much time does society got to give a person to learn the lesson? Maybe for a little burglary, give them 10 years. Don't they know what they're doing to the people in here? They're programming them to be prisoners. They're programming them not to make it out in the streets no more.
Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but only that which is good to edify and minister grace into hearers.
But I'm originally from California, you know, and that's where I was raised. My environment there is a poor environment around where we used to live at. I mean, we did what we could to survive.
Be kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another.
When I started hitting the age of 11, 12, and I started running around with little gang members, you know, joining little gang members and going on, stealing Coke bottles or, you know, or whatever I could to bring some money home, you know, for myself to spend, like that. There were some times where I would have to make a sacrifice, or my brothers would have to make a sacrifice to provide for my sister. Well, really it was like adrenaline, see if I could get away with it too, you know, and it was exciting, you know, at times going to people's houses and you know, and even sometimes the people would be even in the house, you know, and I'd just see if I could get away with it, you know. Sometimes they would wake up and I have to run out the door. And there was times when I did it for, like when I hit the age of 18, 19, I started using the hard narcotics, Class A narcotics, morphine. I started using heroin, you know, and
And I had to provide my habit on that.
Right.
Yeah, that's good work. I don't blame my parents for not giving me love, because they gave me plenty of it. But I was just too stubborn-headed. I wanted to be one of those vato locals, those crazy guys that walk down the street and this and that. That was my decision I made. Well, when I got here, I was passing through South Carolina, really just to check out the place. You know, I wasn't planning to stay or nothing. But what I got involved in was I got involved in a murder. And when I say a murder, I committed the murder. You know, I killed a person. And, you know, and I regret it. You know, it hurts me inside, but, you know, I can't stand and dwell on that. I got to keep on going. You know, as for the time that they give me here, which is a life sentence, you know, that has affected me not only physically, but also spiritually and mentally. But as for my vision, how the word says, it says, without a vision, people perish. And brother, I still got a vision. But see, that vision is sort of like sometimes it tries to fade out and fade out. By seeing myself, instead of going out in the street, you're in another prison. You're being transferred to another prison. 3 weeks ago, they took me to court, all right? They took me to court, and I hadn't been out there for a while. And just to look at buildings, just to get off and walk around on the sidewalk, or to walk into the court, you know, or walk by a bench in the park and sit down, you know, it was the most exciting time in my whole life, because even though I was chained up and had shackles on my feet, I felt that I was free. I was free, and it was just so beautiful, so peaceful, you know. But what hurted me most was when they brought me back to CCI. I come in here and I have to get used to this stinky system again. What I'm saying is just the environment here. It left me in a daze, I'll say for about 2 days.
CCI is not a correction, it's not rehabilitation, it's not punishment. It's just a warehouse. It's a place to dump us for a certain amount of time so that we can't hurt the people that we hurt on the street. Well, my crime is not the run-of-the-mill crime. Any type of sexual crime, you throw economics and all that, education, background out the window. Picked up a 30-year sentence for rape. That's the first time I was ever in trouble with the law. I built 8.5 years and made parole first go-around. Went home less than a year later. I picked up 30 years down in Georgia for essentially attempting the same thing. Well, it's helped society. I hadn't been out there repeating the crime.
When McCown finally leaves CCI, which could be as early as next year, the question will not be whether society benefited during his imprisonment, but what good it did him.
It hadn't helped or hindered. I think because I haven't let it help or hinder me. I've spent most of the 18 years trying to ignore the fact that I'm doing time. That's the simplest way to do time. It's the easiest and the fastest way. If you can switch your mind off, whether it's through books, through TV, work, the main thing about being in prison is being bored.
Corey Funches was recently turned down for parole, but he's not terribly concerned. He will go home anyhow in a few months when his maximum sentence is served.
I want to get back in to my occupation of trade, which is electrician. And I was an electrician before I came in here, and you know, I want to settle down. I don't want to be too involved with materialistic things like getting a brand new car right off the bat. Now I want to get a nice place to stay, you know, hold down a 9 to 5, you know, and just do things until things kick off. If nothing kicks off on the street like a revolution, hey, then I'm not worried about it. I'm going to be an upstanding, law-abiding citizen, you know.
Soon everyone will leave CCI. Its inmates, correctional officers, and staff are being transferred. The entire complex is to be demolished sometime next year. Many people are anxious to put it all behind them. An entire era in South Carolina's prison history is coming to a close. What will the next era bring? A new Central Correctional Institution is going up in nearby Lee County. The expansion of modern prison facilities around the state sees no apparent end. It's almost midnight on New Year's Eve, a time to reevaluate the past and think about the future. All of CCI's inmates have been locked down for the evening, but that never stops a little celebration. One more year, a faceless inmate shouts at the world. And then what will happen, he may wonder. And he is not alone.
The preceding program was made possible in part by a grant from the South Carolina Humanities Council.
For more information on how to obtain a copy of CCI, please call 1-800-553-7752.